morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Tom Quadman with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I would like to thank the Bay Area Council as well as Bridget Hanson for partnering and hosting with us today as well. And I'd like to thank all the people here, but also we have quite a number of people online as well. And want to thank our online viewers also. We thought it was very important to have this event because there are a number of important policy developments that are ongoing that we thought it was we thought it was imperative to bring industry together to talk about some of these things, as well as to discuss some of the work that we have underway with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce on technology. So first, we're going to have a discussion about artificial intelligence. Over a year ago, the Chamber formed an Artificial Intelligence Commission that is headed up by former Congressman John Delaney and former Congressman Mike Ferguson. We have one of our commissioners, Rachel Gillum from Salesforce, with us today. And we think it is very important for both American competitiveness, but also for global tech innovation, that we have appropriate policies put in place regarding AI. So this commission is going to release recommendations in January, as well as a report of our findings. And that commission, just to give you an idea, I think has met in 6 different cities, both here and also in Europe as well. And I've been meeting with policymakers in both areas. Secondly, we'd like to have a discussion about the importance of technology in small business. Small business is using technology in terms of competitiveness, in terms of growth. I mean, we've all heard different anecdotal stories regarding how technology is important for small businesses and connectivity during the COVID crisis. But, we released a report to put some sharper numbers on that. Small business, through its technology uses, contributes $17 trillion to the U.S. economy, as well as 100 million jobs. So there's a lot there, and how tech policy impacts the ability of small business to use tech. Actually, there's an economic consequence with that as well. So we're going to have 2 panels today. First one is going to be led by Michael Richards, who's been heading up our AI work. And the second will be run by Jordan Crenshaw, who runs our CTech group, to talk about the small business fund. So, Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you, Tom.
Well, again, appreciate everyone coming today, and appreciate the people who are tuning in. This first panel is on AI 101. And really what the point of this is that we've seen that over the years that there's a need to just have a conversation about how AI is doing great things in society, and how the connotations and kind of thought processes it be from everyone mentions the Terminator to robots taking over, that's just not the case of what's going on. And that there's a need to really have a thorough discussion about what this is, how it's benefiting society. And, the only way to really do that is bring in experts to really talk about this. I by no means am an expert, and that's why I have to call people like these 3 gracious people who decided to spend time with us today to talk about this issue. First and foremost, I have Dr. Wolf, who is, co-founder of Theater, right? CEO as well? Mm-hmm. Yes. And we have Renee Yao from NVIDIA. And last but not least, Rachel Gilliam from Salesforce. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come and talk with us today and really kind of pull the curtains back, to really put it that way. So first and foremost, if everyone wants to take a few minutes to introduce yourselves, tell you what your day job is, tell us how you interact with AI, and why that's important to your work, and how that's working.
Sure, I'll jump in. Like I said, my name is Rachel Gillum. I'm at Salesforce. I am a vice president within the Office of Ethical and Humane Use of Technology. Longest title ever. But basically, our remit is to make sure, to ensure the ethical and inclusive design, development, and then deployment of Salesforce technology, including our AI products. And so hopefully we can talk a bit later about the process by which we do that, but we're really focused on making sure our AI is trustworthy, that we're mitigating potential risks in the design process before it's sent out into the world. So thanks for
And my name is Renee. I lead global healthcare AI startups at NVIDIA. We have a startup program called Inception, and Theater and Q Bio are two startups that are actually in our program. I oversee 1,800 healthcare AI startups across medical imaging, medical devices, genomics, drug discovery, and digital health. And these startups are among 10,000 startups in our Inception program that help accelerate their go-to-market, technical support, etc., for various different industries. So 7 years that I've been at NVIDIA. The first couple years, I was actually on the AI system DGX team, and I had a great fortune of also working cross-industry within different business unit for self-driving car, telecom, big data analytics, to the last coming up 3.5 years in the healthcare side. So happy to answer any questions that you guys may find interesting.
Tamir Wolf, physician by background, and also an ACL, and ultimately dove into co-founding theater a few years ago, witnessing in healthcare. I think it's important when we're talking about AI to think about what are we leveraging it out for. The sake of technology is useless, but the value that we can derive from it. And so the team that we've assembled at Theater is really trying to take the world of healthcare and surgery head on and leverage AI in order to identify really what's going on today in operating rooms, sort of like the last silo, I guess, of non-transparency within healthcare. But the idea is to identify best practices and then disseminate them. Because today there's like sort of this paradigm of where you live. So that's for actually leveraging AI. That's a bit about me, that's a bit about Peter, and also thanks for having me here.
Thank you for those introductions. That was great, and I think everyone can see how we have a great panel for today. So, seeing that there is this growing stigmatism around artificial intelligence, can you tell us what artificial intelligence is, how it works, and how it's become such a powerful tool?
Okay, stigmatism. I think so. In our world in healthcare, I can tell you that healthcare is sort of like when we think about it and we think about evidence, there's not much evidence around a lot of things within healthcare. I can share with you that aside from being a physician and an entrepreneur, I was a cancer patient last year, and as I was going through the motions of identifying, where do I go for surgery, where do I go for chemo. It became really evident, this isn't something you learn in med school, that there is very limited understanding or data out there that you can base your decisions on as a patient. I guess most of us in this room will not be physicians or surgeons, but there is a slight chance of being a patient. When you're a patient, you want to understand, all right, who do I go to? Who's the best for what I am going through? Today, there's no understanding. And so if we come out of, just one simple use case like that, we can start talking about where AI can help in unearthing, surfacing, and understanding best practices, like identifying, surfacing, and understanding, like who are the top physicians that, we can go to. What are they basing their decisions on? There's so much data, so much information out there. And only by the virtue of the tremendous compute power that we have today can we start, identifying insights. So for us at Theater, AI is not really artificial intelligence. It's more around like actionable insights, if you will, that can help us make better decisions. I think Renee can talk a bit more about compute power and what we can actually do with the technology that we have today. But ultimately, I think the idea behind everything that we're hearing is leveraging tremendous data sets from around the world in order to be able to derive insights in a way that's actionable very quickly, and change a lot of the way that things have been done up until now.
Yeah, and then to maybe take it a little bit higher level, if you think about it from the umbrella term, the highest level is like AI, artificial intelligence. A lot of people say a lot of things are artificial intelligence, and then you go one layer lower is machine learning, and then one layer lower that is deep learning. So deep learning essentially is mathematical algorithms that help human augment our ability to make decisions. And if you think of earlier when he's mentioning cancer, right? How do you detect, segment, and classify tumor or cancer? Those are tasks specifically that you could potentially use deep learning to help physicians, surgeons to make better decisions. Let's imagine this is a tumor, right? When I identify that this is a tumor versus another thing that's not a tumor, or I'm going to classify this to say this is a tumor and that is not a tumor, or I want to segment this. If you're taking an image of me right now, you are segmenting the phone outside of the entire background to help further hone in on this is actually a tumor. So by using a lot of different mathematical algorithms and technique, AI can automatically, continuously be smarter and learn faster to help identify, classify, and segment various different objects. It's a very interesting thing because that's only one use case, right? That is an image data that I share with you. It can also be translated into text data or video data like what Theater is working on. And in the text data space in Salesforce, they do a lot of helping us figure out in our CRM space, who are the best customers, go figure out. And maybe they're using Salesforce, even with chatbots, on how do they have a more human-centric conversation back and forth to get to the insights a lot faster. So for me, AI, besides a mathematical algorithm, there's a lot of things what Theater just mentioned. One is having the data, right? The next thing is training the algorithm to be very smart. And then when you inference it is when you deploy it into the ecosystem. And underneath that is a compute that can actually power every single stage of it. When I say every single stage of it, yes, it does include data as well, because there's so many different scenarios where you don't have enough data, like rare diseases. Can you do synthetic data? And that requires compute. You require large compute to train an AI model to be very sophisticated. And you require potentially GPUs, graphic processing unit as compute for inferencing, deployment at the edge, which is what they are doing in real time. It's fantastic because you can actually have like surgical data be gathered in real time to be able to figure out like how to best enable surgeons to make decisions for their patients. And QBio is another very great example. They actually do digital twins of human bodies and using all sorts of different types of data to give patient a 360 view of our health. So hopefully that gives you guys more perspective on what AI is and some of the terms that maybe you guys have heard about as buzzwords in the industry.
And I don't have a whole lot to add. You actually touched on a number of use cases. Obviously, Salesforce isn't as exciting as, in my opinion, medical use cases, but we're really helping businesses run more efficiently, right? Taking data to help business, operate, find great opportunities, scale their workflow, find insights. Tableau is also a Salesforce company. So business intelligence to help you make better decisions and really scale and compete. So I'll leave it at that. But thank you.
All right. So we've kind of already gone through this a little bit, but maybe it'd be better for us to go a little bit further. So we talked about compute power, data, and other variables have helped the technology grow. But can you kind of explain how there's been a massive jump in this over the last couple of years, how that's actually impacted, I'm sure, your company quite a bit based on the compute power needed, and why those different variables are important and how those are continuing to grow and how that will happen?
I think in healthcare specifically, it's easy from this perspective because it's such an archaic industry. Everything is so old, and initiating change takes time. So right now we're witnessing a move to the cloud, for example. For you, Rachel, that's probably true. But this is something that's going on, quite a bit, and this is how things are in healthcare. So with the advent of technology, and things are moving so quick, state-of-the-art algorithmic capabilities are changing on a monthly basis, if not faster. So things are moving exponentially forward. For us at Theater, we're really tackling some very basic problems, like the fact that even if you have hundreds of millions of procedures that are done annually in the world in a way that's minimally invasive, most of them are not captured, they're not stored, and no one analyzes them. And so just creating capability to routinely capture what is actually being done. So that's like the first component of what we're doing. Obviously leveraging power of cloud, et cetera. But then, once you gather, millions of hours of procedures, what do you do with them? How do you make them actionable? And so that's where like the next layer of what the team leader has done comes into play. And one of the most interesting things that we've done is create algorithmic capabilities that can actually analyze procedures as they are happening in real time. And so you've got an 8.5-hour procedure. Each and every one of the steps, key events, key milestones that happens during that procedure is analyzed in real time. And so before the surgeon leaves the operating room, they can review 8.5 hours within seconds. They can see what went well, what went wrong. And the next evolution of the product is actually providing real-time decision support so that, if a surgeon is doing something that, would ideally be different based not on their own subjective experience, but based on the experience of, thousands or tens of thousands of surgeons, that would be what guides them. So that's a bit around like our tech.
I just ask that you speak into the mic. I think we're having a little bit of issues on the live stream.
Okay.
Everybody.
Okay.
I think it's everyone.
Great. That's fascinating. I don't know, 8 hours down to several seconds is the latest benchmark you guys are using. These startups are just amazing because they're changing the world like every second. The last time that we talked was a couple months back, and they continue just to make innovation everywhere. To share a little bit about healthcare and life sciences overall from data, compute, and other variables perspective, 30% of the world's data will actually come out of healthcare industry. It's huge. And for this $10 trillion business, we are seeing the data continue to increase like 36% year over year. So that is, it just, everyone, unfortunately, down the road, we will probably be a patient and all of us will have data. So that's one area that we see this huge increasing trend, right? And this 8 hours down to seconds to illustrate like the power of compute is not unique to the surgical industry. Let's pick another industry, genomics. We recently worked with Stanford and Google and a couple other organizations. We broke the world record for DNA sequencing. What used to happen is that if you go get your DNA sequenced, it will take you weeks, if not months, to get any data coming in. But we were able to do it based on a software called NVIDIA Clara Parabricks on top of GPUs, our compute line, 5 hours for DNA sequencing. That means if you go into the hospital the same day, someone will be able to tell you if you may be carrying certain genes that have a rare disease. Imagine if you have a newborn, several hours, you'll be able to at least know what's wrong with your newborn if hopefully there is nothing wrong. So things like that is where compute really add a lot of value. And I do think many other variables, like even putting policies in place, could add a lot of value too, which I will nicely pass it on to you.
Yeah, and just to get back to your original question, like what has enabled this? So, and from a business perspective, obviously, it's all about the data. Basically, the data and the development of AI go hand in hand. In business case, we're looking at the internet and just troves and troves of data that we see now. Businesses, and it's really an imperative now that businesses, in order to compete with one another, really are collecting the right data so that they can, get that competitive advantage. So it's from the things that you like, the things that you dwell on, that you click on, even your Netflix algorithm gets better and better as you watch more movies or you skip the recommendations, right? Constantly iterating. The things that you buy, all this type of data and behavioral data is used to really inform and drive, those AI developments, particularly in the business space. So that's really the bottom line. It's just this data that's being collected. And you think about, again, social media conversations, language is being analyzed, right? And to develop these bots to become more human-like in their interactions. So there's a lot of really interesting and exciting applications There are also a lot of risks, that need to be mitigated as well, but it really helps us understand human behavior and, become more competitive in business.
I probably should listen to my own advice and get close to the microphone. I'd actually like to talk about those other uses and things like that. Obviously the technology, you all work in the field, is increasingly being used in different places, but there's also, this far out look of how the technology potentially helps in the future. I would love to hear about what you're excited about in the future, how that's what you're monitoring on that front, and what just gives you a goosebumps when you think about it. I mean, I've heard some great ones so far, but I'd love to hear more.
I can start. I have so many. One of the most exciting thing that I'm looking at right now is medical metaverse. I know everyone feel like the metaverse thing is like a huge hype and all that, but it's happening, you like it or not. This developing things and collaborating things in the virtual environment and building the next evolution for 3D internet we're at the very beginning, and we start seeing. I already interacted with probably 50 startups that are building medical metaverse in particular. So use cases that I have seen that's working out pretty well. One is with improving operational efficiency in hospitals. Let's hope there will never be a pandemic again, okay? But let's say that somehow, for whatever reason, we do end up going through that again. Imagine hospitals, administrators will have tools at their fingertips to be able to say, let me click one click of a button. This entire virtual environment in the hospital is simulated. If I don't have enough ICU room to put COVID patients in, if I want to convert my OR room into an ICU room so I can fit more COVID patients, what is my opportunity losses and how many janitors do I need to turn over bedrooms like that? How many nurses do I need to ensure that enough patients are being taken care of? We can't do that now, but these use cases are being talked about and putting plans on how to make that happen. It's pretty amazing. Like even with delivery room in the hospitals, Texas Children's Hospital is doing that right now. They are trying to figure out the best way to deliver the baby and then train their entire hospital staff to do that. Other use cases, like be able to do digital twins of organs. I already mentioned about QBio, but a dozen years ago, Siemens already did digital twins of organs like hearts and other things. As we continue to learn more about science and how our body works, imagine if you have a virtual environment, let's say of your heart, and how do you maybe do surgery on the heart? And in the virtual environment, the 3D virtual internet that you're seeing here, how the blood may come out, or if you use this instrument to do X, Y, and Z thing, this entire demonstration is compliant to the laws of physics. It's gonna be game-changing. And some other ones is like designing medical instruments in radiation therapy space. It's a space that if you do get cancer, unfortunately, you have to go. One of the most widely used technique is radiation therapy to maybe apply the right dosage of radiation to reduce the tumor and cut out the tumor accordingly. Those machines are expensive. Like it's like 6 to 8 million each, those machines. Imagine if you can design a huge machine like that in the virtual environment for the next generation of whatever portable system that you want. How much money could potentially be saved? Those are some of the very, very exciting use cases in like medical metaverse. And there's just so many companies that are doing that now. It's definitely an increasing trend. And I'm gonna just round up with one more, which is in the drug discovery space. Using AI to find drug candidates to be able to go into clinical trial to help us find the next drug is also another very interesting one. Earlier this year, in Silico Medicine actually put the first AI identified drug into clinical trial with human. It happened earlier this year. That has never been done before. And this is changing the space like we have never experienced before, because what in Silico Medicine could have accomplished only took them 2 years and a few $1 million, whereas others using traditional methods without AI would have cost them 10 years and billions of dollars. So the space is happening, and we definitely need a lot of you guys to help us guide policy to ensure civilians and patients are healthy and protected with everything.
Yeah, I'll just briefly say, actually, a lot of the most exciting sort of future capabilities, I agree, are actually in the healthcare space. Personally, I find extremely exciting, really beneficial to society in many, many ways. And in particular, and this is more of a personal anecdote, supporting folks with disabilities as well. My daughter is hard of hearing, so she has her hearing aids, and it's just been really exciting to speak with doctors and learn about just the different advancements in this space. I mean, we go back and just think about something as simple as just captioning, live captioning, that's going to enable her to just really be engaged. And frankly, we all benefit from those type of simple updates and design features. But even with her hearing aids, which can automatically detect if she's somewhere windy, they will adjust for that. If she's in a loud restaurant, it's able to focus on the person she's likely talking to and sort of blank out the background noise. So really increasing her ability to really, operate in society, that disability really, not holding her back as much. And there's a lot of promise and further advancements that looking at in that space. So just like a personal anecdote, and many others, that I've seen in other spaces. But speaking of, folks with disabilities, speaking of, different minority groups, I think it sort of highlights the need, though, to really not leave those folks behind. Again, as exciting as, medical advancements can be, we already know our medical system is rife with inequalities and disparities, and AI will not fix that. In fact, it could make those disparities worse if we're not, intentionally accounting for that, right? And you're making sure you have the proper data, that you're including, these different groups and investing in those spaces as well. So as exciting as it is, I hope we move forward with a lot of intention and caution and thoughtfulness in that space. It is so important.
So I want to touch upon one of the things that you just said. I think the way that healthcare has been built up until now, and all even double-blind, randomized, all these controlled studies, whether in pharma or devices, have had significant limitations up until now, because the right populations, or the populations that were studied in these studies before marketing whatever solution, were very flawed and didn't address the entire patient population. And so you'd have a drug come out that is inappropriate for treatment of certain communities. I think that's where actually AI can come to our aid. Otherwise, garbage in is garbage out, no matter what you use for it. So that's just one comment. From that perspective, I think one of the things that we're working towards, and that's really exciting in our space, is the robotic landscape. Today surgical robots are still master slave, meaning that there's a human that operates them and moves a joystick. Frankly, my 7-year-old, who's like amazing on Nintendo Switch, can actually probably move a surgical robot. But ultimately, I think over the next 10 years, there's going to be a move towards more autonomy. And when that happens, a robot will be able to put a suture in. But what we're working towards at theater is really this concept of surgical intelligence. We want to be that cognitive aspect that drives the robot to do the right thing at the right point in time. And to us, that's one of the most exciting aspects. So ultimately, we want to tackle and alleviate variability and disparity in the field. We want to be able to augment human surgeon capability. But if we're talking about the sci-fi version of everything, it's ultimately driving the decision-making of robotic platforms in the future.
Appreciate that. I think we all just kind of heard you guys mention this on the side, or kind of throughout your answers, that there are concerns regarding the technology. There are things at which we need to look at how we mitigate it. So for the audience who might have concerns about AI, what is your answer to them on those, and how are you and others in the field working to help mitigate this? I would love to hear from the panel on that.
Well, I can jump in because this is my entire job. So, as I mentioned, Office of Ethical and Humane Use of Technology. So we launched our AI product back in 2018 with the launch of a product called Einstein, sort of the first comprehensive AI solution for CRM. And at that same time, our lead AI ethicist, which was then a user researcher, Kathy Baxter, went ahead and started working on with engineers, with different experts on our trusted AI principles, and really just outlines our commitment to really making sure that, you know, our AI is trustworthy, it's transparent, it's responsible, it's inclusive, these sort of things. So it's really built into the process, and that is what our office is focused on. And we, you know, employ these, you know, principles in various ways. You know, our you know, guiding principle is really human rights and making sure we're keeping that in the center as we think about, you know, the risks at hand. We make sure we're really protecting the data that we're entrusted with, you know, in this process. We really seek accountability. So we're inviting external parties to really assess our research, take a look. We have an ethical use advisory council that we work with regularly. So this includes a set of external advisors as well as internal executives and frontline employees who are closest to the product and the data, really coming together to help us, you know, identify and mitigate risks. We seek to really, you know, empower our users, you know, with the tools. So we actually build in features into our AI products to help enable the customer to use it most responsibly. So this includes, you know, clear guidance on how to use it, number one, but number two, different features. For example, if you decide to put in zip code into your model, for example, little flags just to let you know zip code in the United States is highly correlated with race. There's a risk of bias. Again, there's perfectly legitimate reasons why you'd need that in your model, but just so that you're aware, you know, of some of these things. So features like that. Let's see, you know, we also try to strive for model transparency. We publish model cards on our, you know, on our products so that, you know, again, we can have that external visibility into it. And then we really strive for inclusivity, not only in the composition of our teams who are doing this work and doing projects like we do consequence scanning workshops with our product teams, saying this is what we're trying to build. And folks, we come in and say, great, what are the intended and unintended consequences of sort of what you built? What could go wrong? And really try to workshop that and then build in features to mitigate those risks, again, from the beginning. So we've really tried to build it into our process to really catch those challenges at the front end and build in protections around that. And then, of course, constant iterative feedback there. We also have, you know, some policies around, you know, use cases that, again, our products were not built for and that have high risk to society if they were used in that way. So we'll build in those protections as well. So we have a series, again, of processes we train, and we're, you know, only so big of a team, but we do trainings across the company. Every new employee knows about our office. And so we really try to sort of spread this gospel and way of thinking, if you will, you know, for those that are building these products. And it's really become part of our culture. And, you know, we're really privileged to have this, you know, mandate and authority from our CEO, who really, you know, called for our office to be formed. And we do try, you know, humbly, we don't have all the right answers, but try to share and publish a lot of our work, because we do know there are a lot of startups and small companies that don't have the resources to really have a whole team dedicated to this, but really try to share what we can.
I would chime in with some personal anecdotes, and then I will read from my phone of what our NVIDIA trustworthy AI initiatives are, because that is not my area of domain expertise. We have a big, massive team working on it, and I would prefer to say whatever they're working on accurately. But from personal anecdote perspective, because I oversee 1,800 healthcare AI startups, let's assume we're going to go into a research agreement with a startup. They sometimes will share data. We will make sure that, like, for example, data need to be de-identified with no patient privacy at all before we enter into a potential research joint agreement. Another very interesting thing is with FDA and CE mark. So in healthcare space, there's a lot of regulations around what product is safe for a patient to be leveraged. And last year, there are more than 300 FDA and CE marked approved AI imaging algorithm. So that's only one segment among many that I work with. And with that, the FDA and regulatory bodies have actually put policy in place to say that what type of AI is actually okay to use in public. And one very interesting thing is about this continuous learning aspect. And as you feed more data, valuable, clean data, you could potentially get a smarter algorithm or more accurate or faster algorithm. And as the AI continue to learn to be smarter, how often do you resubmit for FDA approval? There are startups that have figured that out to time their software release for multiple different FDA and CE mark approvals. So those are things that just based on my personal anecdotes working with the startups, but I am not a policy expert in any way. So the next segment, I will just read from my phone. So NVIDIA, we have this like trustworthy AI initiative. We take it very, very seriously. So there's one part is the product lifecycle, AI for software. We make sure that trustworthy AI requirements actually is into the product lifecycle process and developing like related training modules. The second thing is model cards, where we enhancing our model cards to incorporate relevant trustworthy AI information. And then we have algorithmic bias, framework for assessing and mitigating unwanted bias. The fourth one is model risk framework, process for measuring and mitigating model risk. And then it's education and training, general training on ethical consideration and AI in general, and model registry, creating a database of AI models that are released commercially or have potential commercial applications. And last but not least, explainable AI, which is building more software development toolkits, SDK, for trustworthy AI production, automation, both to extend machine learning operations management and to serve the global AI assurance industry. And these are the 7 items that we built in, and every single item has a very strong team behind it. So it's a massive team. If any of you guys wanted to learn more, we're happy to share more. I thought to read it because it's super important for you all. I don't want to get any of it wrong. And yeah, we take it very, very seriously. And you can see that a lot of these trustworthy AI initiative is around building the model and algorithms, because for NVIDIA, we not only have compute, we also have, we call the 4-layer stack. We have the system software and we have the platform, we have the application framework. Every single layer that's relevant to our company have trustworthy AI initiative built in place. Yeah, thank you.
Well, we're not as big as either NVIDIA or Salesforce yet, but I guess I need a Rachel. The operative word is yet. This question is very interesting to me because, like in my background, so when I was going through med school, I also did a PhD, and when I was doing my PhD, reading papers and looking at what's out there, I was never ever able to reproduce a single publication that was scientific. Ever in my career. So there's always like something that's missing or kept as know-how, or like I was never able to like take a publication that I read, even in like places like the New England or the Lancet or like top journals in medical literature, and replicate them. And so the bar, I guess, is relatively low, and anything can be better from that perspective. So I think as long as what you have, like the right intentions, there's transparency, and you have to a certain extent processes, even if it's like in early stage companies. I think you're well off, and especially in what we're doing, I think in healthcare, the ability to change the paradigm from even education and training that is extremely siloed, and the exposure you have to experiences in patients is very much dependent on, where you trained or, the city that you live in. The ability of AI to take it to the next level is really substantial. So at least in healthcare, from my experience, there are only positives.
Thank you for that. I think we are getting to the question and answer from the audience stage of this. So I think we might have a question, time for 1 or 2 questions. So yes, sir.
Thank you for your useful insights. I have a question regarding competitiveness. First, at the U.S. versus other countries. Second, Silicon Valley versus or Bay Area companies versus other areas of the United States. If we are competitive, why? And if we're not competitive, what do we need to do? Ultimately, trying to get U.S. companies competitive.
I don't have a bottom line. I think that there is competitiveness, but competitiveness, in my mind, is not a result of one algorithm or another. I mean, you take two Stanford grads, and you probably be able to put together like whatever algorithm. But I think competitiveness is ultimately one, what is the use case or what's the unmet need that you're trying to solve, and then two, your approach to doing it. I don't think AI from an AI perspective is really what will lead from a company perspective to being like competitive.
Do a lot of work and spend a lot of money and time to try. Oh, sorry. Do I repeat that? But like spend a lot of time and money to try and help people with visa issues because we want the best and brightest to work on that. So I think that is something that, at least as someone on the hiring side, we spend a lot of time on. I think that the U.S. can be more competitive around. From a higher education side, I think also that's related, right? How we think about where we fund and how we allow funding around that front to increase the talent here.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, as Michael mentioned, I sit on the U.S. Chamber of Commerce AI Commission. As we've been traveling across cities, that's been like a common concern. One way we're able to compete, also we do attract a lot of tremendous talent through our universities. But then the challenge is, based on the current visa situation, a lot of folks have to go back home whether they want to stay or not. And a lot of folks see that as a major missed opportunity where we're educating these folks and sending them away. And so just that has come up as a common thing in every single conversation, around this issue. And then from a macro perspective, as we mentioned, data is so important, to furthering the development of these systems. And I think that's deep in the conversations around regulation of AI, around privacy, about how do you, uphold those values that we have, of, privacy and equality and those things that still allow for innovation to continue and finding that right balance. Because one thing that, China has that could be an advantage is that just huge population, massive amounts of data. There's not that same, set of protections for privacy. And so that's been a core part of the conversation that we need to think about, when we're thinking about regulation.
I agree. And to add a bit more, talent is a very important part. There's definitely a lot of organization that's been around and have people been working in the same organization for 40 years. They have to be trained, task force like that to get back into the workforce. Around talent, right? Even though I talked a lot about like AI, many of the AI technologies are being open sourced. It's freely available out there for the developers to take. What that means is as soon as it's on the internet, anyone, anywhere, in any of the regions and countries can take it if they know where to find the information. So first of all, that kind of like, normalize the potential innovation. Because I feel like in US, there's a lot of innovators and creators, but as soon as everything is out there in open source, which is the nature of how we collaborate in this AI space, everyone else will be able to get hands on it. So the question is, how do we stand out as a country? Data, compute, and collaboration will be my answer. Data, there's many countries that have centralized approach, government control the data in areas that are most important. If you don't have the data, algorithms cannot be smart. It cannot be specific for the niche area you're going into. Let's assume that you are trying to figure out a rare disease for children. A lot of startups don't have that data at all. Another interesting thing, I just came back from Africa. I was there for 2 weeks in South Africa and Nigeria. When we consider minority data here in the US, it's a majority of the data there. Whatever drugs that we have here to go and solve the same disease over there, they get 30 to 40% overdosed. What if we can share that data in a meaningful way? That is going to unlock doors for us in a very, very significant way. And also, I'm been working with the Veterans Affairs team for a lot of the AI tech sprint a lot. And one of the key products they have is actually to ensure they can gather the right amount of data for various different challenges in competition, like identifying cancer in lungs or whatever. And then the second one, compute. I know that seems a little self-serving because they come from NVIDIA, but a lot of large organizations like Johnson & Johnson buy massive compute. And even from the government level in the US, there's massive compute to be able to train algorithms faster. Time is money. And I even watch small startups in biotech buy massive compute. Recursion Pharmaceutical was an inception partner in our program. They went IPO this year. They bought a massive pharma compute themselves just so they can attract talent. They have like 50 DDGXs, like just racks and rolls of just so that they can use the AI to find the next drug candidate faster than other people. They can run millions of experiments in 1 week. And some of those other startups that don't have that compute resources will need to take months to maybe run 1 experiment. But from the government perspective, if you guys make that compute available for the masses that are US startups, innovation is going to come. Because the faster you can crank through those experiments, the better. Next, collaboration. Collaboration is very important. I already talked about Africa, like data sharing as an example could be a very interesting thing. Working with Israeli company. Israel companies are so innovative, but their market is so small. They are constantly trying to sell a lot of their solutions into the US, but sometimes they don't know how to get into this market. Can we do more collaborations with other countries like that to continue to make sure technology is not only for their small region, but also can serve the US population and vice versa. So data, compute, and collaboration is, I think, how we're going to win, because AI is going to be democratized across the board as we continue to nurture this open source innovation.
And then from the Chamber's perspective, this is a shameless plug for the U.S. Chamber Commission on a report that will be coming out in January of next year, which will be addressing this issue directly. I think that is all the time we have for today's panel, but can I get a round of applause for our panelists today? Thank you all for coming today. I think up next we have Jordan Crenshaw, Vice President of CTech.
All right. Well, thank you very much. My name is Jordan Crenshaw. I'm Vice President of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's Technology Engagement Center. Today, I want to talk a little bit about the engine of the U.S. economy, and that's not the tech sector, that's small business. And the tech sector does help keep the small businesses in our country thriving and surviving during challenges. What I wanted to talk a little bit about today was a U.S. Chamber of Commerce report that we just released a couple of weeks ago, and some of the key findings, and hear from some of our partners in the small business community to talk about how they're using tech. Our report, we partnered with Teneo. They're a nationwide polling and analytics company to really do research and polling of small businesses across the country to figure out from an economic perspective what the impact is of companies that are small that are using tech, and also really dig deep and see how they're using technology. A couple of key findings, though. We found that small businesses that use tech contribute $17 trillion to the U.S. economy and support 100 million jobs across the country. 93% of small businesses are using at least one tech platform. For example, 66% are using social media in some way to advertise their customers. 36% are using some form of point of sale, so think Square or a payment app. About a quarter of those companies are using a CRM tool like a Salesforce to keep track of potential customers for their experience and to reach out to them. But also a few notes just from the impact of this report. Companies that used 5 to 6 tech platforms were more likely to be competitive against their competitors. 84% of small businesses that use this number of tech platforms said their profits increased. 82% said their sales increased over the 2 years during the pandemic. And 74% said they were able to increase their employees of their business. This is across the board too, and you'll see in this report, by the way, and we have copies of it out front. Across the board, even for veteran small business, minority-owned small business, women-owned small business. So these numbers are just absolutely fascinating to see. Across the board, companies that use tech are able to survive and thrive. A couple other key areas too. 77% of small businesses said that technology platforms help them weather supply chain issues. 81% said help them with costs over the last 2 years. And then also, I think some notes as well too. Here in California, 76% of small businesses said tech platforms help them survive the COVID-19 pandemic. 95% said that here in California. And when it comes to nationally speaking, I think this is a big number to think about as we're looking at tech throughout the ecosystem as well. Tech policy doesn't operate in a vacuum, so we need to make sure that we get it right for small businesses that are using it. 81% of small businesses nationwide said that technology platforms help them compete with larger companies. That same number, 80%, said that if you limited access to data, it would harm their business operations. That's why it's critically important as companies are looking to use tech now and even tomorrow. Even 27% of small businesses say they're going to be looking at using AI in the near future. That's going to be key that we get tech policy right so we don't harm small business downstream in the tech ecosystem. So shameless plug for the report. We've got copies out front if you'd like to take a look at it, or you can visit a digital copy of it at americaninnovators.com. But with that said, I want to have the real stars talk about their experience with technology. We were going to be joined today by Wendy over at Casa Indian. She's a little under the weather, but I have some answers for her that she's actually sent in today as well. So I'll go along. Pardon me if I'm reading through my phone for that today, but I'll go ahead and let everyone on this panel, start with you, Rug, talk about your story a little bit, how you got into your business. Tell me a little bit about your business, and we'll go down the line.
Sure. Good morning, or should I say, yeah, we're still morning here. My name is Harag Kalebjian. I'm the owner of Henry's House of Coffee in the Sunset District. My father started the business in the mid-'60s, and I grew up in it, and I hated it as a kid. He dragged me to work on the weekends to help him out, and I wanted to watch Scooby-Doo. So when I graduated from school, I focused on economics and did corporate finance. I actually worked in this building for about 3 years at United Health. So it's kind of interesting. I joined the business in 2013 after thinking about how good of a business my father had created. Like, he was on the way out, he wanted to sell it, and I thought I had an opportunity to sell coffee online. 2013, my wife bought a lot of stuff online, mainly from Amazon and websites. So I made a switch and started selling coffee online, primarily through social media. In 2014, we launched. We were doing about 20 orders a month. Nowadays, we do about 1,000 orders a month. Pretty successful. And I'll talk more a bit about how that's helped us through the pandemic. But one of the things that I think has helped us a lot is the digital aspect, because I grew up in the old school aspect. I was the one putting stamps on the old school mailers that my dad would do once every 3 months or so. And it was just a list. We didn't know if people liked the coffee. We didn't know anything about them. We just stack them up, put the rubber bands around them, and ship them out. And so, having gone through that, and then now seeing what's available is amazing, and it's a big part of our success.
Morning, everyone. My name is Simileolowa Adebajo. I'm the 27-year-old head chef and owner of Eco Kitchen. Eco Kitchen was started in 2018 as the first Nigerian restaurant in San Francisco. The goal of my business was to represent my culture here, because when I moved here, I realized there was no representation for Nigeria in this city at all. People had very little understanding or knowledge of my country and what was going on there, what our culture and food and language was like. And I felt like my business could be a point of reference for a lot of people in San Francisco. We started as a delivery-only business using the food delivery apps, Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub, and eventually we morphed into a pop-up restaurant concept and then a traditional restaurant concept. Through the pandemic, we have evolved into a catering company. We offer virtual and in-person cooking classes, and that evolution really can be attributed to tech. Was me being able to look at the data and see that due to the pandemic, the way the customers were going to be interacting with my business would be totally different. And so I had to quickly pivot and give them the same products in a way that was accessible due to the situation at that point in time. So yeah, that's my business story so far.
Hi, everyone. My name is Clarissa Shen. I'm COO at QBio, and I guess we're still a small business in that we're a startup, but I'm on the panel more because we work with small businesses like private medical clinics and private doctor offices, as well as larger hospital systems, who are providing them the tools that have allowed them, especially during the pandemic, to be a lot more productive and more competitive. And interestingly, in terms of what we do, but providing a digital twin platform and an executive kind of comprehensive view of health, we've made it possible when a lot of places shut down and proactive and preventative care was not the focus. We made it possible for a lot of hospitals and doctors to be able to do this virtually. So there was a huge growth in a lot of adoption tools that allowed for more virtual care and allowed practices to stay open and allowed physicians to continue to provide, proactive kind of health and care instead of just the kind of acute care that I think a lot of places had to focus on during the pandemic. So happy to talk about those kind of things that are happening. Partnering with small business side, the things we've seen.
Well, excellent. I think, some of the things that we've heard, obviously, the last few years, it's been tough on small business, whether it be supply chain issues or the pandemic. Can you, starting over here, can you tell me a little bit how you've been able to use tech to manage through the pandemic and supply chain issues and some of the challenges we've seen in the last year?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing with tech, we have a cafe as well. The biggest thing with tech was just communicating what our hours are we even open, what sort of products you can find in our cafe. So that's been extremely helpful. And then from a supply chain perspective, obviously having data, I think you were mentioning this, the more data that you have, the more right decisions you can make. And so typically when we're ordering our products for the holiday season, we'll start gathering data in August. But because we were noticing that everything was being delayed, we were actually ordering it 2 months even in advance before that. And sometimes we would even find that the order was being shipped, but it was just sitting on the dock. So like in our case, we sell coffee. Our coffee bags were literally at the Seattle port for a month, and we couldn't access them. But what tech allowed us to do is just to explain that to the customers, because if you're sending blank generic bags now, that confusion of what the heck is this? Is it the same product? So using Facebook, Instagram, email, even text message marketing to let customers know, hey, look, here's our situation. Coffee bags on the port, still good coffee, just the bag's a little bit different. Was able to provide some sort of reasonable expectation for the customers for us.
During the pandemic, tech was definitely the biggest way I was able to continue to serve the customers safely, considering that my business was a direct-to-consumer restaurant model. I started using platforms like Talk, a third-party delivery service, where people could pre-order the meals for curbside pickup, which allowed me to safely continue to serve my customers. I used social media to communicate our hours, and obviously email and text marketing as well, to update people and let them know that we were still open, but that we were offering modified service due to the restrictions of the pandemic. A huge turning point for my business during the pandemic also was the virtual cooking classes, which I invented. I started doing those through Zoom and Google Hangouts. And initially, it was really just a way for me to continue seeing people's faces, because it felt like the business became kind of soulless or faceless once you started doing the contactless deliveries and the curbside pickups. I wasn't interacting with the customers anymore. So with the virtual cooking classes, I was able to, feel like I was still in a room with people, interacting with them, and create some sort of, the feeling of togetherness, because a lot of people were feeling quite like alone and bored during that pandemic. And it just wouldn't have been possible without technology. So those are, I'll say, like the three main areas with which tech helped me during the pandemic.
I think one of the other things we found in our report too was that small businesses felt that tech has given them a leg up to compete with larger companies. Can you all tell me a little bit about how you feel tech has helped you, at least stay in competition with some of the larger companies out there?
I mean, the biggest thing when it comes to a small business and when you're competing with not only other small businesses, but with big companies, is your story. And, in my situation, I'm always selling the story and not the product. Third generation coffee roaster. I poke fun about how I hated it growing up. I think all those adds credibility and a connection with the customer. Tech helps you tell that story. When you're doing a 30, 45-second video on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, you're talking about your personal story. You're talking about the pros and cons of working with family. And that creates a really deep connection with the customer. So it doesn't feel like you're selling a product. And once you have that connection, the plus side with that is it leads to retention and it leads to word of mouth, which we all know is the best sort of advertising. So it all starts with the digital aspect of how else do you tell the story? Whereas back in the day when I was 12, the story was a 3-panel mailer that nobody really read. Now you have video, you have audio. You see the people that are selling you the product, the roast. You're seeing me and my dad talk about how it's tough working together, right? And that creates the connection. And without that, it's just a piece of paper that you're mailing to somebody that feels very soulless.
So for me, I feel as though there are 3 ways to look at how tech really helps small businesses compete with larger companies. In a larger corporation, you would have a marketing team, you would have a finance team, and you would have some sort of team working on like operations, delivery, logistics, and things like that. When you're a small business, you don't really have the resources to be able to hire or staff those kind of teams. And so on the tech side, tech takes care of your marketing by giving you the most efficient value for your money through something like social media marketing. And so you're able to get reach for a fraction of the cost using social media, and you're able to run ads literally using your mobile phone from anywhere. On the finance front, on the fintech front, a lot of small businesses, as he mentioned, have really benefited from point of sale services, being able to quickly collect payments from their customers. And that's really on the finance side. My business specifically uses Square, and Square was a lifeline for me since the beginning of my business till now. The first line of credit I ever received for my business was actually through Square. They have something called Square Capital that loaned me money according to what my revenue was at that time. And I needed that capital during the pandemic at the beginning to keep going. A lot of people don't know these services are available through fintech, but fintech really is the helper of the small business. When you don't have a bank to give you a loan, sometimes fintech is a better way. Also tools like Square Invoicing, Square Payroll literally help me to get through my finance tasks in 5-10 minutes. I'm done with all those things. Third, on the delivery operations and logistics side, if you are a small business, maybe 10-15 years ago, you'd have to hire or delivery drivers, or you'd have to buy a truck or a motorcycle or something like that to be able to start delivering to your customers. That means you'd have to get some sort of insurance as well to be able to cover your truck, insurance to cover the driver. You're paying for so many things. But with the delivery apps coming out, things like Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub, suddenly you're able to bypass all of that and you can get food to your customers. Not only that, you are being put on the same platforms as corporation restaurants like McDonald's, Arby's, Wendy's. So you are literally being like put on the same platform with them, which therefore increases your visibility. So tech has really, stepped up the way small businesses can be perceived and seen, especially next to the larger corporations, and it helps us to grow faster or scale our businesses faster than we could have 10-15 years ago.
I think that's actually a really great point you brought up about it. It's not even just social media; it's all kinds of tech that are helping small business compete. I mean, Wendy was telling me that she was able to use apps like even Toast, for example, to do orders. Also using different kinds of technology for inventory and payroll. Those are just things that not everyone can afford to hire full-time staff to do that. And in this environment, tech just helps give that leg up. Clarissa, you work with smaller physicians groups. I have a brother who's a doctor right now, and he said even in the medical profession, it's hard with COVID. Can you tell a little bit about what your work is doing in terms of helping small physicians stay ahead during the pandemic and right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting when we talk about competing with larger competitors in the healthcare space. I feel like the smaller physician groups in some ways serve a different audience. So it's not so much competition, but helping to better serve and know the kind of audience that they're serving. So a lot of the kind of private medical offices, private doctors' offices, they're not necessarily competing against large hospitals, collaborations with large hospitals. But especially during the pandemic, I think there was one with the shelter-in-place and the move in the healthcare system all towards all resources going into COVID and the pandemic. A lot of private practices, especially the patient practice down tremendously. And you saw this even with like dentist groups and other groups where a lot of it is about preventative care. I think for the smaller practices, what we've allowed them to do that they can continue to quote unquote see their patients having to actually do it into our dashboard. Literally, a lot of people talk about it's like virtual physical.
Yeah.
So it's better than even like having someone come into your office where you like feel them, you talk to them, they have to make the trip, you like it's a conversation. Instead, we're giving them you're actually then seeing that person in digital format, right? And having all that information. And in the end, what we have is kind of a check-in, both for the physician and the members. They can see like, well, everything's fine, nothing is changing too much. I'm healthy. I don't actually need to go. In fact, there's something like there's different statistics out there that show between 40 to 70%, depending on what you're talking about, doctor's visits are actually not the right doctor's visits. And so how can you do better about that? And better physician patient panels. Doctors are spending time with people who really need it, spend more time. But with the check engine like now, well, we can tell you like, hey, see a doctor 6 months again, or get your check in 6 months, or you need to go see someone now, and you actually have the data that allows you to say, hey, I need to come in system, I need to see X, Y. And for our physician partners, obviously that's huge value because a lot of the smaller practices, they don't have staff to do all this testing, all this data collection. for them. And it allows them to be competitive and stand out for their members and their audiences, different segments. That's how we partner with them. And I think not just us, but during the pandemic, there's a lot of technology that's been adopted that's actually, I think, and hope staying, including things like telehealth, right? You don't have to go in. Our platform, for example, it's built with telehealth in mind. You can actually Zoom call and have the conversation with the physician. You're not waiting for this is a paper to be mailed or CD-ROMs to be shipped that nobody can play. That's honestly where the healthcare system still is in many places. So that's how we help smaller.
I think another area too, our report looked at 73% of small businesses that were using delivery apps actually grew their workforce during the pandemic. And that's an important number, especially as we were dealing with job losses during that 2-year phase. Maybe from the restaurant perspective, can you tell me a little bit more about how delivery apps have helped you and been a game changer for growing your business and reaching out to others?
Yeah, so delivery apps were extremely essential to the starting and the growth of my business. I mentioned that my business actually started as a ghost kitchen. So I had no physical sit-down space. It was simply just, you can order on Uber Eats, DoorDash, and Grubhub from Friday through Sunday. And when I started my business in July of 2018, all I did was I started running aggressive Instagram and Facebook ads to the entire San Francisco Bay Area saying there's Nigerian food here. You can't come in, but we can deliver to you in the city of San Francisco. And I didn't have the money to get a delivery fleet of my own and do all of that. I didn't have the time or resources because I also had a full-time job. I was working Monday through Thursday at the time. So the delivery apps helped me to really streamline my operations in that aspect. And during the pandemic in particular, the city of San Francisco had this temporary emergency legislation passed where the delivery apps had to cap the fee that they were charging at 15% of your revenue on the app. And that was extremely helpful too, and probably attributed to some of the growth that we saw of restaurant business in San Francisco that were using the delivery app because we were able to still reach our customers, but the delivery apps were not taking as much of a chunk out of the revenue during the pandemic. And it's extremely important that legislation like this that helps us to, one, keep our costs low and continue to be able to serve our customers and deliver to our customers, continue to consider like the state of small businesses as we move forward. Without the delivery apps, majority of the restaurants in my borough where I was located at that time would have completely shut down during the pandemic. So delivery apps were technically like a lifeline for restaurants at some point.
I think it's an excellent point talking about how delivery apps have really changed the game and linked up customers and are vital. And making sure we get good policies in place that enable the delivery apps also to operate as well too is key. I think one of the other, I guess, not to put anyone on the spot, but obviously there's a lot of talk about regulation in tech. What are some of the, I think, challenges still now on the ground for you, just from a business perspective, but then also from a regulatory and policy standpoint right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll speak for myself. I think the biggest challenge right now is what Apple did with their 14.5 iOS update, where they are now asking users of the phone if they want Facebook or Instagram to track their information. And what we've seen is prior to that, our cost per acquisition was like $22 to get a new customer. Now it's gone up to about 30. And the sad part of that is, as a business owner that's advertising, I have a lot of data, meaning Facebook tells me it's a chunk of people, but I don't see any of the details. the advantage for me is I can do very targeted, specific advertising. I know somebody's interested in our story or in our product or in my culture, and I can advertise to them. And it's very clear that our cost to acquire that customer is cheaper. When that goes away, it's like me going back to 1983, putting stamps on my postcards. And I describe it like mom and dad are fighting, and we're the kids stuck in the middle. We don't really understand what they're fighting about, but we're the ones that are being impacted. I get the idea and the concept of data. I get that. I totally understand that we want to keep that private. We're not seeing the data. Like business owners, we don't see phone numbers, we don't see social security numbers, names, nothing. All we see is a number that says, based on what you want, there's about 150,000 people that you send to. This is like gold for us. These are people that are interested in our products, that want our product. And so with that change, what it's done now, it's completely gone. And so we're trying to figure out other ways to advertise. I'm actually going back to freaking physical mailers, which is crazy. But when you're a small business, you gotta figure it out. You can't just sit there and cry. I've got my dad's legacy to uphold. Like there's a lot of pressure, and I want to do the best in the right way. And unfortunately, when things like that happen, it affects us. It always ends up affecting small businesses, not the big corporations. They'll figure it out. We're the ones that are now paying 25%. For us, that's the biggest challenge.
I mean, it almost seems to say that you're actually enhancing privacy doing it this way by not seeing the actual data itself and working with social media companies as opposed to having to go out and get the list yourself almost. I mean, at that point.
Yeah, and if I don't know if you guys have ever gotten a list, they're garbage. Getting lists doesn't work. What works is when you're advertising specifically on social media platforms, when people are engaging with you, meaning they're clicking on it, they're watching it, they're posting, they're commenting. That is a real engagement. That's a customer that actually did something that you posted that they liked. And being able to retarget them, resend them with different ads, that's how it works. Buying a list doesn't work. If you buy a list and they give you all this breakdown on segmentation and stuff, A, it's very expensive. B, you're only sending it once. You have to send it multiple times. Whereas with Facebook, Instagram, Google, you do these kind of what we call, cold, you go from cold, warm to hot audiences. It's a lot more effective. And that's gone. It's not gone, it's going away. It's unfortunate.
I think that's one of the points that we found out in our report was when it said 80% of small businesses said if you reduce access to data, it's going to harm operations.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything he's just said. I noticed, I would say in the past 6 to 8 months, that the effectiveness of the Facebook and Instagram advertising significantly changed. And we're having to spend more money to be able to get similar or even less engagement than we were getting before. The truth is that having more specific data helps the small businesses to be able to reach customers that are interested in exactly what you are offering. And it's more challenging when you now have to start going and looking through other traditional means to be able to see, okay, how do I find people who are interested in specifically African food and Nigerian food, and they're in the Bay Area and they like dining out. And so it becomes another challenge or another layer that the small business owner has to deal with that we just didn't have to deal with before. And this just doesn't affect just social media advertising. Even on the end of like email marketing, when you think of that, there are several ways in which these laws can affect the way we contact our customers through email and text too. And these are huge ways that we've been streamlining our marketing efforts as small businesses for the longest time. So it's important that small businesses continue to have access to the data, even to the extent that we understand that there's definitely privacy laws. The customer's information or secure information should remain secure, but to some extent, we also need this data to be able to really hone into what the customers want and reach them with the right products and services.
think it's a slightly different in the healthcare space. It's, as the last panel talked about, it's a very regulated space. But I think from a data access standpoint, and the last panel mentioned this as well, it's hugely important in terms of competitiveness. And whether macro level US competitiveness or the development of new technology, all of that. But I think interestingly in the healthcare space, there's been a bit of a push on like making people share data better. So the interoperability rules that came about more recently, forcing hospital systems to try and share data, especially since when it goes all the way down to patients, the fact that patients have a really hard time getting their data out of hospitals. And if you've gone to multiple hospitals, forget about it, unless you've printed everything out, right? So I think that movement towards making that data shared across systems, making that much more available in different channels. It's, yes, there's privacy concerns. Obviously, it's health data. You have to think about how you do it. But by pushing that kind of interoperability, that access, I think it's empowering for, in the end, the consumer, right? In this case, patients. So that's actually something we take very seriously. We believe very strongly that patients own their data. I think it's ridiculous that I've had to like, pay $60 to get my health record from the hospital, but that's my data, right? So those kind of things where data access is being opened up. There's regulations forcing hospitals to not lock their data up in a way. That's definitely overall the landscape competition, and allowing us also as technology companies to provide that.
Go ahead.
I always think about credit cards because I'm in the e-commerce business, and with credit cards, you tokenize it is the term that I hear all the time, right? Like it's really not the actual number. We're passing through some 1700 digital something, and the customers are comfortable with that. They put their credit card in the website. I use Shopify. I don't see their credit card number. It's tokenized. Why don't we tokenize this personal information? It seems, I don't know, maybe it's too simplistic for me, but it seems like the same concept where, I don't need to know your social security number. I don't need to know, how many children you have. I just need the tokenization part so I can send you more cooler stuff. That's all we're asking for. If I don't know from a legal perspective how that works, but small business runs this country. And I feel like the more we get into data, the more we're getting into mobile platforms, the more tech, the more we need that data so that we can adjust and tweak and do all the amazing things that we did to survive a pandemic. It's unfortunate that it feels like it's going away.
No, I think that's a good point too. And I think one of the issues, and Wendy mentioned it as well, was things like even like rewards programs small businesses want to operate and using technology to track that. There's a lot of legislation. I know there was concern with California's privacy law that you may not be able to have a rewards program under the CCPA. I think there obviously are concerns as we look at federal legislation that you may not be able to have that, and that's directly impacted by regulation. So obviously that's a big, excellent point to bring up right there. And I think Clarissa, you brought up an interesting point too about the need to get data access right. I think part of that is like digitization and making sure that we actually get off of paper tracking and paper documentation and get us into a digital age. We're doing a lot of work around that around government at the U.S. Chamber and trying to do that. But there are things that were done during the pandemic, like needing to sign a document online that you couldn't do before. And maybe I want to see, are there any types of new technology you all are considering using for your businesses going forward?
Yeah, actually, now we went from social media to email to text message marketing and now to an app. So we have our own app that you can place orders on, but the advantage of that app is I can send what are called push notifications to customers that have the app. Customers that have bought from me, they have the app on their phone. Obviously, you can turn off the notifications, but we're trying that right now because the cost to kind of retain those customers on social media has gone up. It's expensive. People are not opening emails as much. Now text messages is becoming annoying. So that for me, that was my next thought was, let me try the app aspect. We'll figure it out how it works through Cyber Monday and the holidays. And if it does well, then we'll continue.
On my end, I've just been working with some social media and digital advertising strategists. They have new technology that's supposed to be able to use AI to look at your past advertisements, your past audiences, and use that to be able to optimize campaigns and strategies for the future. I'm hoping that this should be able to help us get our advertising to be more effective or as effective as it was in the past, given the new challenges with data sharing. I'm also considering going more into like the global e-commerce market. Amazon is a market that covers, Amazon is one of those markets that's really popular in the United States, but there are things like Alibaba, DHgate, and other more like global e-commerce platforms that I'm recently learning about and thinking maybe I need to be on those to be more competitive in markets different from North America. So it's just really looking at what options are available because as he said, as a small business, you literally have to be 10 steps ahead or doing 10 times more than the larger corporation to be able to compete on that level. So I'm just at this point open to any opportunities that will put my business in front of more people who are looking for the services I'm providing.
Larissa?
I guess, we're on the other side, right? We're trying to get folks to adopt more of this technology and in many ways bring the science of medicine back to the forefront versus the art of medicine, which is then relying on subjectivity and access. And honestly, then there's built-in, with subjectivity and access issues, built-in biases that also come into play. And so from our end, we're really trying to get more of this kind of science of medicine back in, provide these tools to practitioners, provide it to hospitals so they can be better service providers and have better efficiencies. And there's a lot of cost savings, obviously, that's possible in the healthcare system. We know that so much of it's spent very late in the process. How do you push it back to, spend $100 maybe up front, but you save, 100,000 down the line when people get.
I think we have time for a few questions. Happy to answer any questions about any of the policy recommendations that the Chamber has to keep the tech ecosystem going, or any questions for our panelists as well. Anyone?
Hi, I'm Balz, the Consul General of Switzerland. My country has 95% of small and medium-sized enterprises doing exactly the same what they do here in America. They drive growth and innovation. My question that I had to both the panelists and to you is the following. We have heard now success stories of people who have driven small businesses and who are very tech friendly. I think you're an economist and you have been a financial analyst before. You survived and were thriving with these apps, at least to a certain degree, but there were also a lot of businesses who lost their customers and they got bankrupt. For the two panelists, can you tell us what would be your recommendations for other small enterprises, how to handle tech and how to adapt to all the changes that you have mentioned? And maybe to the American Chamber of Commerce, how can you help bringing these competencies into the system of your small companies and train them maybe on tech skills? Thank you.
Yeah. So for me, I will say the biggest key to staying or keeping my business open throughout the pandemic was just staying present. The Independent Restaurants Coalition of America reported that I think around 60 to 70% of independent restaurants completely shut down during the pandemic and are not coming back. So in order to keep my business going, I was just constantly online, constantly looking at Google News notifications, what new technology is coming out, where can I be putting my business that people are really looking at, what are people consuming during the pandemic, what are they doing, what are they reading. And this really helped me to just stay on top of, what was happening, what are the activities people are into. The second thing for me was just really consistently interacting with and engaging my customers on social media, asking them, how are you doing, what's going on, giving them updates about our business and how the legislation that was being passed throughout the pandemic affected my business. And really just keeping it real and being human also, I think, really resonated with a lot of people during the pandemic. During the pandemic, I also had the challenge of my business burned down in a fire, and I had to rebuild from scratch in July 2020. And it was tech that helped me get over that hurdle to, communicating with my customers via social media. This has happened to us. Putting up a GoFundMe and, the whole San Francisco community rallied behind me, and I was able to somehow get my business back open within like a month due to technology. Without tech, that wouldn't have been possible. So it's really just staying on top of it, being consistently in communication and engaging our audience, and just continuing to pivot and adapt to the situations that are thrown at you.
I would say I think there was two main kinds of customers in my experience when they were struggling with the pandemic. One of these that had some type of a social or economic presence, and the other one that did not. And for your question, I would say that if you don't have any type of tech in your business, you need to make that a number one priority. I would argue that if you're a service firm, you might say, well, I'm not selling anything. You don't have to sell anything, you just have to be digital present. And because you're digitally present, then you can have communication, you can reach out, and you can have engagement. I think some business owners don't understand that. If you're like a lawyer in your service industry, you're like, I'm not really selling anything. You're actually selling yourself. You have to build that relationship. So you have to have social, Google, Instagram. You have to have that. That's the part of the job. So that would be my first answer for you. Second, if you do have tech, there's a lot of less expensive options that make you feel big, even when you're small. A very simple example is not having a Gmail or a Yahoo email address for business. This is so unprofessional. And for $6 a month through Google, you can have your own domain email. Something simple as like info@Henry's is $6 a month. So simple things like that may seem like it's a cost, but it's actually, I would say, it's an investment for a business, especially if you're trying to compete. There's a lot of little tools. Email marketing, there's a ton of free email marketing. MailChimp, Klaviyo offer free services. So I think in a short way, if you don't have tech, you can get into it. You have tech, there's cheap, expensive, not expensive options for you to survive. Feel like you're part of this like new age of businesses.
I think one of the things too, I think I can speak as a consumer, and also we've done some polling of consumers throughout the country, and 80% of Americans have used a payment app in the last month. Think, farmers markets and small businesses. How many times have you used cash at a farmers market recently? That kind of technology is huge. Over half of Americans in the last month have bought a product or service from a small business online in the last month, and that's through social media or Google or any of those other avenues or through Amazon. And so from a consumer standpoint, there is a real power in attracting business that's helping small business compete. I would say from a policy perspective, and we've heard today, several concerns out there. One, data is key to everything and driving the online economy. And one of the problems we're seeing is a fragmented approach in the U.S. and have 50 different states looking at different privacy regulations. If you're a big company, you can figure out how to navigate that. You can't do that as a small business. So there was a report that came out from ITI that said it would cost small businesses $200 billion if there was a fragmented 50-state privacy approach in the country. We need one national standard. Now, a real national standard, though. We've seen talk on the Hill recently about a bill going through the American Data Privacy and Protection Act that claims to be a big tech that will actually impact everyone from charities all the way through to small businesses, and claims to have preemption, but it doesn't. And I think that's one of the concerns we have there is that the preemption right, which would create the national standard, has 15 different exceptions for 15 different state laws. And so it's a new national patchwork, and we're not solving the problem. And the bill would expose small businesses to private rights of action and lawsuits. So we need robust protections for consumers. But at the same time, we've got to make a privacy law work for both small business, medium-sized business, traditional large business, and large tech companies that actually is workable and knowable. A couple other suggestions too. I mean, you mentioned that you're going to be using AI. We need a national AI strategy in this country so that we can compete globally with China, and we also need it so that the small businesses know the rule of the road. For example, our team today was testifying about a bill in Washington, D.C. that would require AI regulations and impact assessments for any company that has 25,000 individuals' data or more. That is a food truck. I mean, so we need to get policies right, both on the state, local, and federal level, to ensure that the companies can really survive and thrive. And you may, think that a regulation might hit certain group of companies that are in this area, tech companies, but it's going to impact everyone nationally. But that's our perspective from the chamber approach there.
So you guys mentioned Alibaba, Amazon, and other e-commerce platforms. Yes, there are lots of positives helping you sell your stuff, but there's also this weird dynamic of it's an outsized, huge company versus you guys, and the negotiations happening, how little wiggle room you actually have in terms of defining how you price things and how you deliver. How do you feel about that dynamic?
I think when it comes to listing your products as a small business on a platform like Amazon or any sort of global marketplace, the truth is that you're going to have to make some compromises in terms of the pricing, because you're not just pricing it for your local market. My business is located in San Francisco, so I'm not just pricing it for San Francisco when I'm listing it on Amazon. I'm competing with thousands of people who have similar products across the globe. And so I have to think of ways or, pricing strategies that will be able to help me compete with all of those people. But there's a trade-off, as with anything, like opportunity cost is. So I'm giving away a little bit of my margin in order to be in front of more eyes, to be in front of. That's like one of the largest e-commerce platforms globally. Most people, if they're searching for something to buy, they're going to put it in one of those, e-commerce search platforms. And so, really, just like with anything in life, it's a trade-off. You have to kind of figure out how much of your margin are you willing to give in order to put it in front of that audience.
Yeah, I would echo that 100%. And for me specifically, I look at that more as like a portfolio of my products. The majority comes from my website, but I have a little bit of a percentage being sold through Amazon. Like you said, you lose a little bit of margin, but you have it there. And it allows you to pivot if all of a sudden some law were to screw up the way that I sell my website, I can pour more into Amazon or vice versa. So for me, it's just adjust your pricing accordingly and don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Anyone else? Well, we have learned a lot today. We really appreciate all the efforts you have done, making sure that your businesses are the backbone of this economy, either from, helping us from a public health perspective through, just helping our communities, have anchor small businesses that actually keep the neighborhood, culture and flavor alive. And so, we want to thank you all and then ask everyone to give her a round of applause. And that concludes our event today. But once again, if you want to learn more about the work we're doing at the U.S. Chamber's Tech Engagement Center, visit AmericanInnovators.com. But once again, thanks for coming. And thank you to our host, Bay Area Council and Hanson Bridges as well, too. Thank you.